want to first, let's introduce ourselves. Daniels-Haltom, NACA's National Training Representative, and I am currently a candidate to be Executive Vice President of the Union.
Nick Daniels, NACA Southwest Regional Vice President, and I am the candidate for NACA President.
We are running as a team. We've always been upfront and honest about that. Team Daniels-Haltom. You can find us on other social media platforms, and we do have a website at that same name, teamdanielshaltom.com or ndjh.com. So without further ado, let's discuss what we're here to actually converse about. When we first started as candidates, one of the things we said was we weren't going to chase the internet. We weren't going to chase Reddit in particular. But today, a proverbial bomb landed in our lap when, quite frankly, and we're going to be very frank in this live, a member of the National Executive Board and a candidate for Executive Vice President, Mick Devine, the New England Regional Vice President, and intentionally, in our belief, misled our union, brothers and sisters, and it has led to much consternation and potentially irreparable harm to our union. We cannot sit by idly and not correct the record as that occurs. I've had members who rarely reach out to me, and certainly are not hyperbolic, reach out to me with great fear that our union somehow, our National Executive Board, intentionally denied the upgrade of 5 facilities, 5 center facilities that would have gone from either an ATC 11 to an ATC 12 or ATC 10 to an ATC 12, none of which is true. And we're going to lay out a timeline. Let me first start by reading what was put out on a New England update, and also then purposely, because we know it's surrogates from their campaign, purposely put out on Reddit intentionally to undercut the faith in our union, and it has actually done that. But without further ado, let me read what was stated. To put to rest any rumors, here is what actually happened. In October of 2022, the FAA came to NACA to advise them that they were defunding Abacus, which is the program being created that will enable us to count center traffic and get our centers paid correctly. This is written by the New England RVP, Mick Devine. He goes on to state, President Rich Santa argued the ignorance of this decision and how important the program is to accurately pay our en route controllers. Rich presented to the agency with an option to upgrade 5 centers until such time that Abacus was complete. So that gives the impression it was going to be a temporary upgrade. After much back and forth, and without the risk of any downgrades, the FAA agreed with NACA to create a work group to upgrade those 5 centers. This is a mischaracterization and gives the impression that 5 centers were agreed to be upgraded and the work group was going to be put together to implement those upgrades. That is a fabrication. However, let me continue. The FAA agreed with NACA to create a work group to upgrade those 5 centers. Rich came to the NEB, National Executive Board, with that info, and the NEB didn't have the appetite for this because it was not a repeatable process. The position was reached due to needing 75% NEB approval as per the Constitution to pass such a proposal. The work group idea did not receive the required interest to even take an official vote. We're going to work through the timeline of events. Nick was present for some of these events. Some of them I was not for. Some of them I was present for and Nick wasn't. So let's start at the beginning, at least the beginning as we know it. The very first time that the 5 center upgrade was even mentioned was October 3rd, 2022 at a Center Fact Rep meeting in Boulder, Colorado. Off the cuff, Rich was addressing the Center Fact Reps, and without any question, he did discuss Abacus, and he, without being inquired, told the Center Fact Reps that there were 5 facilities that were going to be upgraded, that he had an agreement, that he had not yet told the NEB about this agreement. This was of confusion to me. I was at that particular meeting as the national training representative to provide a briefing to the NEB. I'm sorry, to the center fact reps. This information was pretty interesting, but we left it there. That was October the 3rd of 2022. Questions were asked which 5 centers were going to be upgraded. At that time, Rich didn't provide any more information. I'll now pass it to you, Nick, to tell the next step and what occurred.
Yeah, so, I was present, I was in the room. At that time, I was the Center Fact Rep liaison, later on to be removed from that position. And we had an NEB meeting scheduled for the next week. It was October 11th in San Antonio, Texas. The NEB is meeting. And, this is early on. We've been, an NEB for about a year at that time. And conversation and, briefings occur on a regular basis. Sometimes they are having to, we have to go out and we have to ask for a briefing based on what we're hearing. This was put on the agenda. It was discussed, and it was discussed in a matter, as Jamal just said, that Abacus was no longer going to receive funding, and there needed to be a way and a work group to look at potentially going out and seeing if any facilities could be upgraded and putting metrics around potentially upgrading them. There were questions in the room because this was brand new. We had never heard of this. We didn't know if this was already a deal that had been, reached. What had been gone on? Has this have a scoping document? And so there were several questions in the room by many members of the National Executive Board at the time. At no time was a plan presented that there was already a work group that was going to find a way to upgrade 5 centers. It was a work group to look at metrics of what facilities could be upgraded, if any, and being able to put some data behind that. It was going to be Dean Acapelli and Jeffrey Vincent that would be on that work group. That was what was told to us. And after some questions, discussion, that from October 11th of 2022, we had not heard it until December of 2023. Roughly 14 months later, this came back again. We had never received another briefing, never received another update. There was no vote taken, as indicated. It will cover that here in a moment under the different standing rules of SRJ in our national constitution. So as that timeline and event goes on, we, in National Executive Board, here's on December of 2023 that the Center Fact Reps have now been briefed that the NEB had blocked or did not have the appetite, as it was stated, for doing a 5-center upgrade. And again, this was back from October 11th of 2022 when a potential work group was discussed to look at metrics about potentially upgrading 5 facilities. This is being characterized as there were already 5 centers being upgraded, and somehow the NEB was standing in that way due to pick the rationale or reason why. And again, the Constitution was used as an excuse to it. With that being said, the center fact reps, there were a few RVPs on that call, heard this information. It seemed to be confusing. It seemed to be misleading. And we asked for an update and a briefing at our next NEB meeting, which did just occur virtually for what was supposed to be in Nashville. I happened to reach Nashville. No one else was unfortunately unable to, not to their own fault. Nashville had 6 to 8 inches of snow, and it was crazy. So we went virtual into that meeting, and we could go from there. Jamal, is there anything that you want to hit before we go? You and I both attended that virtual NEB meeting. Anything that you want to cover from, again, the large gap, October 11th, 2022, to this being spoke about to the Center Fact Reps, December of 2023?
Yeah, in the October Boulder Center Fact Rep meeting, the Center Fact Reps were asked to, if you will, keep this low because it was not completely flushed out. In fact, the NEB did not know about it at that time. Rich alluded to the fact, or not alluded, Rich stated that one of the things that he needed was to get the then candidate for administrator of the FAA to be actually confirmed. Subsequently, that person was not confirmed. There was a center fact rep meeting in Albuquerque after that, and the reps. I remember talking to some of the reps about the 5 upgrade and them not wanting to actually mention it again because one, no facilities were actually stated, and no one wanted to upset the apple cart. That goes to the premise that essentially we serve the president, and we all need to fear that if we upset him, perhaps we would not be included in the 5. We, Nick and I believe all of the members of the National Executive Board would gladly stand and applaud if anyone could get 5 facilities upgraded, and most certainly 5 centers, and would not stand in the way. So we've covered October 3rd. We've covered October 11th. We've addressed somewhat what occurred at Albuquerque, and as we move forward, Nick also covered the NEB call. I happened to be on the NEB call. There were several questions on the NEB call. Back and forth transpired. At one point, Rich stated that the NEB, that he actually had proposed 7 facilities to be upgraded, but he really only wanted 5, and he wanted to provide room for the negotiator to capitulate down to 5. Again, I would prefer to be anywhere rather than airing the dirty laundry of the union out on a Facebook Live. But the fact of the matter is, these lies, and I'm going to call it exactly that, these lies were told to create division and to undercut the faith in our union. When you hear people speaking about decertifying the union, voting the entire executive board out through a vote of lack of confidence, those are dangerous things to a union. And those things are promulgated based on a lie. And I hate to say the word, but that is in fact what it was. There was never, at least to me, reported that there were 5 facilities that were going to be upgraded if just a work group would be put together to make that occur. If you could, Nick, speak to the 75% threshold and how that would apply, or if that actually applies to this particular set of circumstances.
Yeah, so I did ask during that meeting if there is some level of non-support from the NEB. We've never had a vote on this. We've never been briefed in 15 months. What constitutional provision is applicable in this situation for a work group and or this process to move forward? That was, originally, not known. I understand Rich didn't have the Constitution directly in front of him at that time, and he came back and we spoke about SRJ, and I, distinctly asked, is that SRJ 2 or SRJ 1? SRJ 2 is the reclassification or pay issues, and it says no further decisions will be made concerning reclassification or pay associated thereof without the approval of the National Executive Board, which would be a majority vote. So it didn't seem that fit the situation. SRJ 1 was then pointed to, and it was then talked about. Those are reclass breakpoints. Breakpoints cannot be changed without a 3/4 majority vote of the National Executive Board. Again, this was outside of that, and that wasn't applicable either. However, it was mentioned and stated like it was fact. What was also mentioned and stated like it was fact was that there were 5 facilities that were going to be upgraded, and somehow the NEB then was looking at it and saying, nope, we don't want that to go on. That in of itself is wholly inaccurate, and as Jamal said, it's not the truth. It is a lie. That is not what it was about. And then Dan McCabe, I don't think he would mind me putting his name out there, and myself, we have 4 of those 5 facilities in our region: Jacksonville, Miami, Houston, Albuquerque, and the other facility discussed, Denver Center. That's what this was really about. And Dan said, because Dan wasn't on the board prior to this. They said, I 100% stand to, if we can pay facilities appropriately for the level of traffic that they are working, we should absolutely pursue upgrading them. Said, speak on behalf of the Southwest region, and the Southwest region stands 100% united that if we could have facilities paid appropriately for the traffic levels of traffic they're working, 100% stand by it. went and doubled down and said, I want to be very clear. Like, there is no way that the Southwest region is any way trying to stand against this process moving forward. However, the process wasn't that 5 facilities were already being upgraded and that was being blocked. As we just said, the constitutional provisions didn't apply. That wasn't even the totality of the circumstance, yet that's how it was portrayed to all of you. So, Jamal, anything in there that I missed or you wanted to hit?
No, I just want to drive in that this was not a mistake. This was calculated and it was meant to be divisive. You have a choice in this election. It's often said about me that I'm too direct. My directness is because I do not have an appetite, to use the word from that, to ever be misleading. I will tell people the exact truth, no matter if that truth makes me unpopular, because the truth is something that is repeatable. The truth is something that is constant. A lie or a misleading statement is something put out there to create division sometimes, to give one the impression that you are somehow better than you are. And we have to be honest with our membership. As Nick just said, he would absolutely stand up and support raising the facility pay levels for anyone that deserves to have their ATC levels increased. We've worked on several work groups in the past. Typically, there's a scoping document associated with them. Not always, but something of this magnitude, you would expect there to be a scoping document. You would expect there to be records, minutes, things like that. Knowing that none of that occurred, what happened was the New England regional vice president and candidate for executive vice president attempted to prey on the ignorance of people. And I don't mean ignorance as if these people aren't intelligent, the lack of information, the lack of knowledge, lack of knowledge on the subject. Pay is an area of concern for so many people. When you tell over 1,000 air traffic controllers that their pay is being held up by a national executive board and it is false, you do not come to that decision accidentally. You also, Nick, could maybe speak to getting ahead of the NEB minutes that usually come out to address meetings and how that occurred in this particular instance.
Well, Joel, I'll start there, and then we'll come right back to that because I think it fits perfectly with what you're saying. Houston Center has had an 18-year fight for going all the way back to 2005 in the 2005-2006 time frame that they have not yet reached an accurate decision on. It went to arbitration once. That arbitration never reached resolution. We have done nothing but for 2 years try to find avenues of path, and we're finally taking domestic over water versus oceanic to arbitration, thanks to the help of Deon Capelli, our LR department, and we as a union. That's what we do. No one person does any of this. That's why we're all in this together, and why we look to our leadership to explain the nuance, and the nuance is extremely important. But we also to stand in front of you and say what happened and why it occurred. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there as well, Jamal, that we've had facilities that have struggled for quite some time in a myriad of pay issues, and we're fighting those fights on a daily basis. John Bratcher and I continuously work with our LR teams, and we have a scheduled date to go to arbitration. And David Salapata actually today decided, or he accepted the invitation to second chair inside that arbitration. An amazing leader, damn proud to see himself, Danny Watson, and all the leaders that have had to deal with this. Danny Garcia, Megan Nowak, Trevor Thompson. We all know what happens when a narrative is spun. And then suddenly my name shows up, and suddenly everybody else, there's a fuse and a fire lit. Well, that fuse of fire is even put out when leaders lead and go out and speak to the truth and make sure that the record accurately reflects what our union is, what our union is about, and that not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything is going to be done, because we say words of 5 facility upgrade. That actually takes leadership, that takes strategic and calculated, measures and movements, and going out and making sure that we forge a path forward. So Jamal, I think I got off track there. My apologies, brother. And you said you wanted me to hit about the NEB meeting minutes. What part did you want me to cover there?
Yes, that getting ahead of the NEB meetings minutes with this calculated release from New England and what that actually does to undercut the union.
Listen, minutes are meant to be a topic, a brief synopsis of what that topic is about. So that way, a board isn't carrying on, whether it's locally, nationally, a committee, it doesn't matter. So that way, we at least know what's being discussed and can further inquire into those minutes and issues. Many of times, those do not hold it's not like they hold the key and answer to all the discussion. There's not a transcript of everything that's taken there. It is, if there's a vote's recorded. Well, guess what? There was never a vote recorded because as it was stated, there were questions asked and then it was moved on from it. For over 15 months, the National Executive Board didn't have a further discussion about this very topic itself. So those minutes, will never tell the full story. But when somebody goes out and decides to tell their own story in advance of those minutes, as Jamal said, that's calculated. There's a reason for it. And it was meant to somehow pit myself. And the names that kept showing up were actually the 3 regions that all of those 5 facilities fit in. Think about that for 1 second. The 3 RVPs, and again, it wasn't Dan because he wasn't on the National Executive Board at the time, that because there were questions asked, and the 5 facilities were contained inside their regions, a narrative and a weave was spun to try to make sure that there was some level of deception with it. It's not okay for our union.
So ready to close out, brother. Again, not something that we wanted to come forward with our membership. We wanted and still will run a campaign that is about integrity, that is about ourselves, but we could not stand by idly and allow our membership to be torn apart at the fabrics. Hopefully you all on this call, hopefully this video permeates throughout and people dig in and ask the questions. If we were to mislead you or to misspeak, we would quickly correct anything that we misspoke on, because that's the type of individuals we are. You will have an opportunity to cast a ballot. And the people that you cast a ballot for will be charged with stewarding this union. Their integrity will be called into account when they interface with yourselves, members of this union, when they interface with agency management, when they interface with legislators, when they interface with appropriators, when they interface with industry. And if you don't have integrity and the fortitude to be honest with your very membership, everyone else will know you don't have that integrity. It will hurt our union. Nick and I are not that. We will never be that. We're not perfect people. We don't expect perfection, but we will never lie to this membership. It just will not happen.
Listen, in times like this, when you see division, you see these very deceptive campaign strategies or things go on. Leaders got to lead. Sorry to every member that's had some level of burden, hardship, anxiety about feeling that something was taken away from them that has actually never been negotiated from the beginning. And when spoke about was actually mentioned by Rich that the likelihood is very low. It doesn't mean our union shouldn't pursue those things. It doesn't mean our union shouldn't lean forward. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try to find ways to overcome the burdens of being a very short staffed and extremely underfunded organization when it comes to the FAA. That is the charge of our union. We will do that, but we won't allow the truth to be twisted during this campaign. That's it. So,
well, there was a question, brother.
Okay.
We have a question.
Yeah.
I believe it's difficult to read on such a small screen. Is there a chance, Thomas Kukulish? Pardon, I'm not the best. Kukulish. Is there a chance to obtain greater transparency from what we have today, along with the integrity? Oh yeah, yes. We believe that there should be transparency in the way that the union moves, the way we communicate with our membership. If you hide things under cloak and dagger, and only one person has all the answers, then that one person's tale ends up shaping all of our narratives. We plan to be transparent with the membership. We plan to have a national executive board that understands and delivers a message of unity, togetherness. And oh, by the way, that NEB should, before accepting a position, should discuss, should debate, should uh, have conversations about the direction, and then go out with a united direction. And if that direction can't be reached united, be honest about where the dissension was. We have no problem with that. We plan to do that. We've done that at in our locals as local fact reps. Nick has done that in his region. I do that currently as the national training representative. I believe in transparency. Nick, you could answer that as well. And apparently there's another question as well. But
So I'll hit two parts on that quickly. One is transparency occurs when conversations are had. We cannot be yes men and women. We cannot sit in a room and not have a look at and tear something down from every angle. And that doesn't mean it's the answer of no or obstinance. That is ludicrous. So transparency happens when, again, you have those conversations in totality. You coalesce around an idea. You eventually reach agreement, and that takes leadership to get there. That takes somebody willing to not defend positions, but to be open and hear the ideas of others. That's what we will bring to the table. So that's all I wanted to hit on that, brother.
well, Nick, there was a question, and you're probably the more appropriate person to answer this. It says, why was there not further discussion, and why did it not draw the attention of the NEB? I mean, any chance to get our brothers and sisters a raise should be something that is looked into or investigated. So I guess the question is, when it was originally mentioned in October 11th and you heard nothing, why did no one speak to that matter in between that time?
Well, when an idea is put forward of a work group to go on, and you're not on that work group, you usually don't chase that narrative. And the entirety of it is, I do, answering some questions, knowing again, is it going, what's it going to look like? How are we going to do it? You and I are very LR centric. Like, what is the process and how are we getting there? How are we protecting our union members? And is this something that's, can be done again? If abacus is going to take decades, or we were briefed on I don't want to be, hyperbolic there. If we were briefed, the en route version of it was not going to be around until 2028 or 2029 now, that's something we do have to discuss. It's something we have to engage on. But when you're not part of that work group, it wouldn't be something, it would be something we expect from our president, our executive vice president, to come and give us updates on a regular basis on if there was to be movement from it. There are 50 things that are in the works on a regular and routine basis. I think that's probably even low. And what we do is, if you're assigned to that, you provide updates and briefings about it. If you're not, you await those matters. So we understood, again, it was absolutely misrepresented that it had already been agreed to and that this was going to move forward. This was going to be a approach to see what are metrics for those. And now the process in a recent conversation has just started, but this narrative has been spun in a completely different direction. So I completely agree that we should continue to ask. We should continue to look for those opportunities. And if that's something that we can make sure we push for now, until it was brought up on the center factor call, we had no idea it was moving. Again, the National Executive Board wasn't even briefed on it until the virtual meeting that was supposed to be for Nashville in January, that we had to go and seek out this information. Alex Navarro actually put it on the agenda to try to find out about it. And when presented, it was, well, what questions do you have? What do you do with it? There is nothing to do with that besides then go through a Weingarten style of questioning to try to get to an answer and make sure that we could talk about to Albuquerque Center and Houston Center, if there's a process, what's going on and where it is. And we kept Danny and David Salapata, Danny Watson and David Salapata in the Southwest region, updated it on it every time we spoke.
Yeah. Lastly, we'll say is that, as a union, you should always, and we teach this at rep training, you under promise and over deliver, particularly when it comes to someone's money. You do not go out and tell people that they have an agreement in place to provide them money without the ink dried on a product such as that. So it was politically driven misstep, and let's be very frank, it was misleading. With that, Nick, let's close out. We enjoy our discussions with you all. Thank you for spending time with us. Hopefully, the next time we talk, we're talking and we're driving the agenda and having a conversation about our vision for this union.
So we'll end on a high note. How about that, Jamal? Uh,
Sure.
Skyly and I are ready to go eat some dinner, but we appreciate your time. It takes all the sacrifices to have the honest and hard discussions. We promise that. It doesn't mean we'll be perfect and every decision is perfect. We're just willing to ensure that we engage you, we educate you, and that we have a purpose together in this union. Thanks for your time. We'll talk soon.
Good night, Nick.